I think the metaverse is very much like the Oasis in Ready Player One. So if you remember Oasis, it has its own currency, it's coin. People were known exclusively by their in-game avatar, like the look of the avatar and their name. It's always on. The only thing I don't think it will be is that it's the Oasis in Ready Player One. It was still controlled by one entity. In the end, even though the entity was good, hopefully that's not the case.
There's a kill switch in that game.
Exactly. You can turn on and off. So like that's not exactly what we think the metaverse will be. But yeah, it's a very good representation of what it would be. Whether the metaverse is full on VR, I don't think so. I think the metaverse can be what it is without the VR part.
One of the things I want to see with the metaverse is, because I'm sure you saw back early bull market where Jack Dorsey was saying that, because you can tell he's like old guard, jaded with Web 2. You can tell because the whole vision of the internet was you could facilitate these kind of what we're talking about now with Web 3, what is potentially possible with Web 3. So you can tell he's jaded towards that. But I also, when someone who is biased towards that, but you also have to take his information seriously because he's been in the top part of tech in the Web 2. He's been very successful. So what I'm talking about is he said that Web 3 is going to basically turn into Web 2 eventually. Like some companies going to come in, figure out like the Facebooks of the world, some version of that's going to happen. It's going to take away the things that we're describing now with the decentralized ownership, the digital property rights. And I'm curious to see how that's going to play out, because I can see his approach or what he's thinking is like, because think of OpenSea versus LooksRare or Rarible. Those platforms were created, but everyone uses OpenSea for the most part. So there's still going to be like these more successful apps, and depending on how they are built, and are they going to turn them, like is OpenSea going to become a more decentralized version? Like, are they going to open source things that make it to where like they are no longer the owner of the sole product, those things? So there's still a way that a single entity can take a lot of the market share away from the decentralized organizations. And I'm curious to see to the Jack Dorsey's point is I could definitely see where he's coming from, that if it's not done correctly, that large entities can overtake the metaverse in the early stages. I do think, I'm more of an optimist, so I think that the blockchain technology is powerful enough to where it can, it will eventually be not able to be taken over in that manner. But I could see the short to midterm where it could be an issue, where a company comes in and just tries to take over market share, or they promise one thing and they become something else completely.
Yeah, so it just brought up like a couple of things in mind. So I remember watching a video and Gary Vee was interviewed on stage, and they were saying how NFTs were decentralized. He was like, no, they're not. He was like very adamant. It's like, no, they're not. He says like the technology is decentralized, but people are not. And then the other point the other thought that came to mind is like I'm reading this book called Master Switch. Basically, they're saying that for any network, it will all things they tend to become centralized because people are going to want to control networks of value if they have value. So yeah, I mean, like Ethereum, it could be centralized. It depends on how it's going to depend on how it will be managed. So yeah, like right now the stakers like Coinbase, Lido, they have a lot of power if they decide they wanted to do something malicious.
Yeah. And that, I think that's one of the concerns is like, we're starting out we start off, we're slowly moving decentralized to Ethereum, but is it going to wrap around? Like, is the ecosystem going to eventually wrap around where a few entities own all the valuable stuff? In the Web 2 world, Facebook, Instagram, which is part of Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, all these, they own all of the data, which is the valuable asset in Web 2. And it's going to be, for this foreseeable, data is the valuable asset. So if at some point there's something that comes along in Web 3 that captures all of our attention and we start giving too much of our data to this platform where they can eventually take over, I don't know, basically become a data farm like Facebook and Twitter are essentially, that can impact, the decentralized part of it, where again we're focused on a single point of failure, which would be that entity. Because I deal in the current way, we want to think of Web3 is like you own your own data, but with that said, I've sold my soul to Yankee Stadium to get in the gate faster. Like they've got my retina. It's like the OneClear or whatever thing. They make it incredibly difficult. Yeah, they make it incredibly difficult to get into Yankee Stadium. You can
Why?
They've got about 50 ways you can get in, but they only let you in 2 of the ways. So to bypass that, you can go through the OneClear thing and go through that. So I did that just to get a Yankee Stadium. So at some point, I can see, let's say Facebook 2, just as an example. Facebook 2 comes along. They're a single entity, but they're making it where people want to use the platform that it's on. They're centralized. Then they start requiring us to leak more data to them until they eventually have enough data toward we're now dependent upon this company that we thought we were going to be decentralized, or that we thought we'd have decentralized control of it. So it's kind of a ramble, and it probably didn't make much sense, but there is a concern for that.
Yeah. Yep. Hey everyone, this is Jack, and thanks for watching this clip from Hello Player One. If you enjoyed it, you can click here to watch another one, or if you want to watch the entire podcast, click here. See you later.